Mr. Farage.
In generations to come, children will be told a story. They'll be told that once upon a time, Europe was divided. There was a big wall down the middle of it, and the people in the East were very poor, and they had no democracy, and they lived under an evil system called communism that killed millions of its own people. But joy of joys, the wall came down, and we finished up with 27 nations, and those people lived in democracy, and 500 million people lived in peace. But sadly, no, there is more. I promise you, there's more. That's the tires. Thank you. I should just sit down now. Well, I must say, that's the first time I've ever received such applause, and I am tempted, Mr. Verhofstadt, I am tempted to sit down, but if I may, sadly, the story continues, the politicians in charge became very greedy, and they wanted money for themselves, and they wanted power, and so they resorted to lies and deceit, and they staged the most spectacular bureaucratic coup d'etat that the world had ever seen. But they didn't need to use any bullets to do it. They were much cleverer, much more scheming than that. No, what they did is they put in place a new treaty. It was called the Lisbon Treaty. And then they gave 27 people total unlimited power. These were to be the people that made all the laws. Of course, they already had a flag and they already had an anthem, but they went about building a new state. But they ignored the people. And what they did, whether they knew it or not, is they recreated the very evil system that the people in Eastern Europe had lived under before. But the incredible thing was that many of the new bosses had also worked for that same evil system before. Well, of course, the plan was flawed, and their fanciful monetary scheme collapsed. But still, the new bosses wouldn't listen to the people. No, They made life tougher and tougher. They put tens of millions into poverty. They denied people a say. And in the end, those people had to resort to violence to get back their nation states and their democracy. And the moral of the story is they had learnt nothing from history.
Thank you,
of the European
Mr. President.
Before you give this Commission power, remember
Thank
that
you,
60 years
Mr. President.
ago, an Iron Curtain came down on Europe.
Thank you,
that now,
Mr. President.
with this Commission, there is an economic iron fist, and it's being felt in Greece today. We cannot build
Thank you,
a
Mr.
new
President.
country.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And the defining moment for me in this House was we had the French say no, we had the Dutch say no, and then we had the Irish say no, and this Parliament has willfully carried on ignoring the wishes of the people. You just don't get it, do you? No means no. And it's truly incredible that 499 members of this House voted to ignore the Irish no vote and to continue with the treaty. What kind of a parliament is this? If you believed in democracy, you would not just bulldoze aside those 3 referendum results. But Denny Cohn-Bendit, that great champion of free speech, said that opponents of the treaty were mentally ill, and Martin Schulz, the leader of the Socialists, saying after one of the no votes, we must not bow to populism, and that the no votes open the door to fascism. Well, I hope in the next 4 weeks in this campaign the voters of Europe can see the real face of this project. You are nationalistic, you are bullying, you are threatening, you are anti-democratic, you're a complete shower. President, I would like to congratulate you on being elected, although I feel that this morning it's been more like a papal inauguration. And it's rather a shame that this Parliament, if it was a proper Parliament, would actually select members to sit in the chair on ability and not have the usual big group stitch-up. So that's rather a shame. And I think the signs for change here aren't very good. Just yesterday we had Eurocorps, armed Eurocorps soldiers carrying the European flag around the courtyard outside, a sort of European Union version of trooping the colour. We had an orchestra, we had the anthem, we had a choir. We started today, didn't we, with the anthem. This is the same flag and anthem that you said had been dropped after the French and Dutch very sensibly said no to the dreaded EU constitution. You're not even pretending anymore. You're pushing ahead with all the symbols of statehood and trying at the same time to lie and cheat with the Irish by giving them a series of guarantees that are not worth the paper that they are written on. Well, I can tell you that many of us in this Europe of Freedom and Democracy group will do all we can to help the no side in that Irish referendum. The future of European democracy rests very heavily on Irish shoulders. You fought, Mr. President, against the Soviet Union. You fought for democracy. You fought for national self-determination. If you continue to ignore the democratic voice of countries like France, the Netherlands and Ireland, then you will turn the European Union back into that very union that you fought so hard against. Listen to the people, please. Thank you, everybody.
The answer to 1984 is 1776.
Czech presidency has followed a depressingly familiar pattern. Continuity, more of the same, the continuing obsession with climate change, and the continuing drive to have new legislation. You said that under this presidency, legislation in 80 new areas had been worked on, and you seem to be proud of that. I'd have thought it's about time we took a couple of steps back and said what we've got in the European Union is an over-regulated model that is serving us very badly during the depths of a recession. And yet more status quo. You supported the idea of shooing in Mr Barroso without there being any sort of proper contest. But it's on the Lisbon Treaty that I was most interested. You ratified the treaty through your own parliamentary chambers without, of course, the thought of giving the people in your own country a referendum to express their opinion. But it's when it comes to Ireland that I really get interested, because you said that you wanted there to be a credible policy for Ireland with their second referendum. And so you produced these guarantees, and here they are. Guarantees on the right to life, on taxation, on security and defence. This document has no legal force whatsoever. It is not worth the paper that it's written on. You are the author of a disgraceful attempt to con the Irish into voting for this Lisbon Treaty in their forthcoming referendum. Of course, you've been supported by Mr Barroso on that. He doesn't ever respect the result of democratic referendums, whether they're in France, the Netherlands or Ireland. He says we must ignore them, we must continue. It's all about power. It's all about him and the EU institutions getting more power at the expense of the Member States. I hope the Irish tell you all where to go in the second referendum on October the 2nd, and they just might. However, I don't wish to be mean-spirited, because there was one wonderful, bright, uplifting moment during the Czech presidency, a moment when all of us that believe in nation-states, that believe in democracy, that believe genuinely in the rule of law, could come into this chamber and feel, for the first time in my experience, proud of the fact that we were part of this European Parliament. And I am of course referring to the visit of Václav Klaus. What a wonderful speech that was, coming into this chamber and telling a few home truths and pointing out that European parliamentarians and leaders are not listening to the peoples of Europe, at which 200 of you got up and walked out of the room. So at least for Václav Klaus, we thank you very much for the last 6 months.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farage. Mr. Mulzer, 2 minutes. For the non-attached.
You have the floor, Mr. President.
I'd like just to put a question. Is it, I'm not criticizing, but is it allowed to have the flags in our... Because if it is allowed, I just want to put also the European flag here today, if I may say.
Farage.
Thank you. Mr Barroso, you said this morning that all Member States had democratically ratified this treaty. That's not true. The British people have not had a say on this, despite being promised it, and until we get a referendum on this, I will refuse to recognise the legitimacy of this treaty. Now, all eyes are on to President Klaus and what he may or may not do next week. And it's interesting. I know that you all hate President Klaus because he believes in national democracy. But what he's doing here is he's standing up and defending the Czech national interest. He fears German claims over Sudeten properties, and having listened to German politicians on this subject, I think he's absolutely right to be fearful. So hang on, President Klaus. If they don't give you what you want, don't sign the thing. If they do give you what you want, it will need to be re-ratified in 25 Member States, which will mean that the British will have a referendum, and I'm sure as Democrats you would all like to see a British referendum on this treaty. I certainly would. And I wonder, is it really going to be, at the end of this summit, are we really going to have a new European emperor? Is it going to be Tony Blair with his Empress Cherie? Well, I've reached the conclusion that I want Tony Blair. Please do appoint Tony Blair, the man that gave away £2 billion of the British rebate in return for nothing, the man who promised us a referendum on the Constitution and refused to give it to us. It's perfectly clear that in this European Union, the prize for national betrayal is a high one indeed. So please appoint Tony Blair. It will bring home the truth to the British people that it is not the elected representatives that matter in this European Union. It's people that give away national democracy in favour of the European Union that win the top jobs. Please, please, give us Tony Blair as the first President of Europe. Well, good morning, everybody. You're all very downbeat this morning. I thought this was going to be a big, proud moment. I mean, it's taken you 8.5 years of bullying, of lying, of ignoring democratic referendums. 8.5 years it's taken you to get this treaty through, and on the 1st of December you will have it. And of course, the architect of all of this, Giscard, wanted from this constitutional treaty for the European Union to have a big global voice. But I'm afraid the leaders have suffered from a collective loss of nerve. They've decided that they want their faces to be up on the global stage, not somebody from the European Union, and so we've got appointed a couple of political pygmies. The Kissinger question of who to call in Europe hasn't really been answered, has it? I guess the answer can only be Mr Barroso, because he's the only one that anybody in the world has ever heard of, and is probably the big winner out of these posts. No wonder, sir, you look so happy this morning. And we have a new President of Europe, Herman Van Rompuy. Doesn't exactly trip off the tongue, does it? I can't see him stopping the traffic in Beijing or Washington. I doubt anybody in Brussels would even recognise who he is. And yet, he's going to be paid a salary that is bigger than Obama's, which tells you all you need to know about this European political class and how they look after themselves. But at least he's an elected politician, unlike Baroness Cathy Ashton, who really is the true representation of the modern day political class. In some ways she's ideal, isn't she? She's never had a proper job and she's never been elected to anything in her life. So I guess she's perfect for this European Union.
Excuse me, Mr Farage.
Yes.
I would like to put down your postages. You made your presentation.
Right, okay.
Is
Yes,
enough for
calm
us.
down, chaps.
Okay,
Calm down, chaps.
please continue.
Calm down. But I mean, she's never been elected to anything, and no one knows who she is. Even the Prime Minister was talking about Baroness Ashdown as opposed to Ashton. I mean, no one has ever heard of her. She's even less well known than Herman Van Rompuy. I mean, that takes some doing, doesn't it? She's risen without trace. She's part of this post-democratic age. She married well. She married an advisor and a friend and supporter of Tony Blair and got put in the House of Lords. When she was in the House of Lords, she was given one big job, and the job was to get the Lisbon Treaty through the House of Lords, and to do so pretending that it was entirely different to the EU constitution. So she's good at keeping a straight face, and she vigorously crushed any attempt in the House of Lords for the British people to have a referendum. So here she is, never stood for public office, never had a proper job, and here she gets one of the top jobs in the Union. Her appointment is an embarrassment for Britain. But it's much worse. Well, at least I've been elected, sir. Unlike her, she's not been elected, and the people don't have the power to remove her. But just hear the next bit. There's something rather more serious than that. Cathy Ashton was an active member of the campaign for nuclear disarmament. In fact, she was the treasurer of the campaign for nuclear disarmament during a period of time when CND took very large donations and refused to reveal the source. What is known is that these donations were obtained by a man called Will Howard, who was a member of the Communist Party in Great Britain. Will Baroness Ashton deny that while she was treasurer, that she took funds from organisations who were opposed to Western-style capitalism and democracy? That question must be asked. And are we really happy that somebody who will be in charge of our overseas security policy was an activist a few years ago in an outfit like CND? I mean, if we really think that, frankly, we need our bumps felt. I don't think that she's a fit and proper person to do this job. She has no experience, and unless she can answer those questions, did she take money from enemies of the West? That question must be answered. Well, we have our two pygmies. We'll have the bland leading the bland, but I'm not celebrating, because they'll press on with political union, and whilst our leaders may have saved face for the moment for themselves on the international stage, they have all betrayed their national democracies. The European state is here. We're about to get an avalanche of new laws because of this Lisbon Treaty, and there's no question in my mind that there has to be a full, free, fair referendum in the United Kingdom to decide whether we stay part of this union or not. I hope and pray that we vote to leave, but either way, the people simply must be asked. Thank you.
like to ask no. Do you think? Well, chciałem
I would like to turn to Mr. Farage. It would be most appropriate if you turned your tone down, because certain expressions are not acceptable to everybody. I would like to ask you whether you would like to accept a question from some of the members as the blue card question.
Madam Herzog.
I'm just curious.
Please.
What is?
Yeah. Well, maybe. Madam Herzog, please.
Mr. President, Mr. Farage has said that those people they were elected last week are not those the traffic will stop to let them go. And this is why we elected them, because we wanted to elect people who will make the traffic move for all European citizens to get a better life to themselves. And this is what they will do. Mr. Rompuy and Mr. Cathy Ashton are 4 people, and the 480 million Europeans will know it soon. I think this is the stake, and we have to stand for them. We have to save their integrity, personal integrity. And Mr. Farage, I'd like to say something, Hungarian quotation for you. It's good that you are here, because if the monkey goes up to the tree, it's better seen how red is his popo.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you. With respect, I think you've completely missed the point, because twice you said the people that were elected last week. They have not been elected. That is the point that I'm making, and in the case of Baroness Ashton, she has never been elected to public office in her entire life. She takes an enormously powerful job, and the peoples of Europe, of Britain, of everywhere else do not have the power to hold her to account and to remove her, and that fundamentally is what is wrong with this whole European Union. It's all about bureaucracy versus democracy. Things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. But, Mr. President, can I please come back and ask you the question? You seem to imply that I'd said something that was inappropriate or over the top or wrong. Could you please explain what that was? I want to know.
Some way of explanation of the way of selection of the so important people for the European Union, and what you say about the whole issue which is connected with that. It is just, by my opinion, absolutely improper to the whole situation. Well, it is my opinion, colleague. Okay, fine.
When you were elected,
yeah.
When you were elected as president, you said you would act as a neutral president to ensure that all sides of the debate were given their chance to have a say. If you're criticising me on the political content of what I say, then you're not doing your job as a neutral chairman.
Well, okay, thank you, colleague Farage. Now we go to...
That at all. Who elected these guys to run the planet?
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask, is who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy is not popular with you lot. And what mechanism do the peoples of Europe have to remove you? Is this European democracy? Well, I sense, though, that you're competent and capable and dangerous, and I have no doubt that it's your intention to be the quiet assassin of European democracy and of the European nation states. You appear to have a loathing for the very concept of the existence of nation states. Perhaps that's because you come from Belgium, which of course is pretty much a non-country. But since you took over, we've seen Greece reduced to nothing more than a protectorate. Sir, you have no legitimacy in this job at all, and I can say with confidence that I can speak on behalf of the majority of the British people in saying we don't know you, we don't want you, and the sooner you're put out to grass, the better.
The debate last week with European President Herman Van Rompuy. We talked about free speech, and I told him that I thought the limits of free speech were the incitement of violence, not the expression of a political opinion within what is supposed to be a parliament. He said that wasn't good enough, and what I had to do was to apologise. I had to apologise to Herman Van Rompuy. I had to apologise to the European Parliament, and I had to apologise to the state of Belgium. Well, I made it clear to him that I wasn't prepared to apologise to any of them, but I would issue a full apology to bank clerks worldwide, just in case I'd offended any of them. Well, he didn't take very long to decide what he would do, and just in the last few minutes I've been told that I'm going to be fined, the maximum fine that they're allowed to fine us under the parliamentary rules. I'm being fined €2,980. Free speech in the European Parliament is very expensive. €3,000 for a damp rag.
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy is not popular with you lot. And what mechanism do the peoples of Europe have to remove you? Is this European democracy? Well, I sense, though, that you're competent and capable and dangerous, and I have no doubt that it's your intention to be the quiet assassin of European democracy and of the European nation states. You appear to have a loathing for the very concept of the existence of nation states. Perhaps that's because you come from Belgium, which of course is pretty much a non-country. But since you took over, we've seen Greece reduced to nothing more than a protectorate. Sir, you have no legitimacy in this job at all, and I can say with confidence that I can speak on behalf of the majority of the British people in saying we don't know you, we don't want you, and the sooner you're put out to grass, the better.
Je me réjouis donc de cette ambition européenne que j'ai retrouvée ici cet après-midi. Je me réjouis de cette ambition aussi, et je me réjouis de ce sens de l'urgence que j'ai retrouvé cet après-midi. Il y a une intervention pour laquelle je n'ai que du mépris, mais je n'interviens pas là-dessus. On a pris des mesures pour sauver les institutions financières, non pas parce qu'on les aime tellement en tant que telles, mais sans eux, il n'y a pas d'économie. On a mené une politique monétaire intelligente. On a injecté des liquidités dans l'économie, ce qu'on n'a pas fait il y a 70 ans. On a créé pour 16 pays au moins une zone, malgré tous les problèmes, une zone de stabilité monétaire. Dans les années 30, on avait des dévaluations compétitives. On ne les a pas eues aujourd'hui. On a sauvegardé notre marché intérieur, qui n'est pas parfait. Et il faut l'approfondir. Et M. Monti nous fera des propositions concrètes. Mais on n'est pas tombé dans le protectionnisme à nouveau des années 30. C'est grâce à l'Union européenne que le G20 est né, qu'on a pris l'initiative, nous autres, de créer cet embryon de World Governance. C'est pour la première fois que les grandes puissances, les nouvelles et les anciennes, se mettent ensemble pour combattre la crise. On ne peut pas mettre l'Union européenne toujours dans le camp de la défensive. Il y a aussi des choses très positives qui se sont produits. Il faut certaines grandes réformes ou des réformes importantes. Et ces réformes importantes sur le niveau européen, sur le plan national, exigeront des choix budgétaires. Si on dit qu'il faut faire davantage, par exemple, de recherche et de développement, eh bien, on va les prévoir dans les budgets nationaux et dans les perspectives financières de l'Union européenne. Ça exige certains choix budgétaires. Une autre conséquence des choix qu'on fait pour la stratégie de Lisbonne, c'est que tout ce qu'on propose comme objectif ne sont pas toujours des objectifs soft. Ça pourrait être, figurez-vous, des objectifs hard. Et là viendra le moment difficile. Il y a la demande des réformes et il y a l'exécution des réformes. On exige sur le plan européen des mesures dures, des grandes réformes, des réformes hard, et quand on entre dans son pays, je vois peu de résultats de tout cela. La méthode ne résout pas tout. La méthode sans engagement politique, sans commitment, ne vaut rien du tout. Pour la stratégie économique, je veux bien que certains disent qu'il faut plus de contraignance. Oui, je veux bien, mais le traité de Lisbonne, pour les economic guidelines, ne le prévoit pas. Je n'ai pas fait moi-même le traité de Lisbonne, d'autres l'ont fait. Mais il ne prévoit pas des sanctions, des pénalités, des mesures négatives quand il s'agit de l'implémentation des economic guidelines. Regardez de tout près l'article 121 pour être tout à fait conscient. Un dernier mot sur la Grèce. Je crois qu'on a lancé le bon message. On a fait passer le message de responsabilité du gouvernement grec qui doit gérer une situation extrêmement difficile, une situation aussi qu'il a héritée. Si les mesures actuelles ne suffisent pas pour atteindre une diminution du déficit de 4% du PIB en 2010, on prendra des mesures supplémentaires. Nous nous sommes engagés à davantage de monitoring, non seulement sur l'initiative de la Commission européenne, mais aussi avec l'aide de la Banque centrale européenne et même d'une expertise du Fonds monétaire international. Donc je crois qu'on a vraiment bien encadré, bien délimité l'aspect de responsabilité. Et il y a bien sûr, si nécessaire, un élément de solidarité.
Europe for Freedom and Democracy next, President Nigel Farage.
We're in the presence of a great man today, the President of Europe, a man who is so important, he is beyond criticism, beyond reproach, he is the king of the modern political class, he is the modern-day Zeus, and he intends to rule us from Mount Berlaymont, and woe betide anybody that questions his authority or questions his dignity, or they will face severe punishment. Indeed, in my case, the last time we met, and I had one or two things to say, the Parliament imposed the maximum possible fine. And I'm told that if I say anything that upsets you, the microphone will be cut off. Well, what price free speech? What price democracy? But you've come back to us today, and now with the approval of Mr Sarkozy and Angela Merkel, you're the head of a new economic government for 500 million people. And you've launched your 10-year plan, your wish list, and I just wonder, have you remembered what happened to the last 10-year plan that was launched in 2000? It was launched in this Parliament to much acclaim. It was a total and utter crippling failure even before the global recession hit. And in fact, all centralised EU plans fail. Just look at the disastrous, ruinous common fisheries policy. And now your beloved euro has failed. It's failed politically at its first major hurdle. You weren't able to come up with a plan at that summit. You can't bail out Greece without the International Monetary Fund coming in to save, at least for the moment, your euro dream. And yet, Mr Van Rompuy, your plan seems to be, we're losing, we're failing, let's have more of the same. Let's have more Europe, let's have more failure. But what really matters is the loss of democracy here. You have not been elected. You are not accountable. There is no mechanism for the peoples of Europe to remove you. It was Zeus, of course, that kidnapped Europa. My fear is you are kidnapping our democracy. You are only here because that Lisbon Treaty went through without the British people being given the referendum that they were promised. And as far as we're concerned, this is unfinished business. People fought and died so that we could be an independent, self-governing, democratic nation that was able to hire and fire its leaders, and no one that believes in democracy will accept the post of President of the European Union. Thank you.
Well, Nigel Farage, the former head of the UK Independence Party, the fastest growing party in the UK, member of the European Parliament, he ran for the UK Parliament and barely lost against the Speaker position. And on the day of the election, his aircraft tipped end over end, nearly killing him and the pilot. And we were just talking during the break. This is his first interview, and he'd also just coinciding. His book is now published. It's now available at Amazon.com. It's Fighting Bull, the Fighting Toro. Nigel Farage, Fighting Bull, and it's him with a bullhorn on the front with the British flag, Union Jack, I guess, as an umbrella over his shoulder. Nigel Farage, Farage spelled F-A-R-A-G-E, Fighting Bull, great name, and how he's taking on the globalists, the unelected Eurocrats that now make 70+% of the laws in the UK. Our fight against the New World Order is ongoing. Mr. Farage, it is great to have you here, sir. You've got 9 lives.
Just amazing. Anybody listening to this that sees the pictures of the crash, which I'm sure you can get and put up on your site, and these incredible photographs of me lying in the wreckage of this light aircraft crash, and you'd have thought for all the world I'd be dead. And whilst I've been badly injured, it really has been the most miraculous escape. It really has.
Folks are wondering, I mean, I know you've got a stiff upper lip and don't want to talk about yourself, but, the pilot, how he's doing and what your injuries were.
Well, the pilot was a former Royal Air Force trained pilot, so, no cowboy. I mean, a proper chap. It was a genuine accident. In life, accidents happen. You can't insulate yourself against this. When you have an impact injury, such as we had, lots of unpleasant things happen. Justin, the pilot, had lacerations and cuts and broken bones, and he's also got some bad skin problems. He's going to need skin grafts and whatever. And I finished up with 10 broken bones in my upper body. So sternum broken, fractures to the spine, mercifully not huge ones, and virtually every rib front and back broken, plus a punctured lung. So, a pretty comprehensive list of injuries. Facially, a few cuts on the face, but nothing too awful. But mercifully, no real head injuries. So if those awful, ghastly Eurocrats that want to take over my country and destroy our democracy think they've got rid of me, they've got another thing coming, because it may take me a few months to get better, but I'm going to be back fighting them.
Absolutely, and I was saying, you're such a champion of liberty, we'll just stick you in a Darth Vader, iron lung and roll you out against the enemy.
I'm going to be back, and one of the really interesting things, since I had this accident, is the one great prediction that I've had over the years was that this attempt to take countries like Greece and Germany and to force them together in a single monetary union. I've been saying for over 10 years that it wouldn't work. And whilst I've been laid up in hospital and back here at home recovering, of course, we're now seeing the collapse of that monetary system. We're seeing riots on the street in Greece. We've seen people die.
And by the way, to interrupt, and I'm going to give you the floor, sir, in the time we have, you giving speeches 2 years ago predicted all of this. You, just a few months ago, excoriated Herman von Rompuy, the unelected dictator, openly calling for world government. And now their arrogance has evaporated. The London Guardian reported that the Bilderberg Group has said that they're afraid of protesters and afraid of me by name. So they're just horrified that the public is now identifying them. So how did you predict all this, A, and then B, go into the state of Europe right now?
Well, before I was in politics, I had a job in the real world. For 20 years, I worked on the foreign exchange and commodity markets, so I have some idea of how the global economy actually works. And it really exists, Alex, because things are different. Things are different. Individual countries have their own currency, they have their own interest rates, and they're able to adapt and adjust to changing global markets and changing conditions. When you try and pretend, as part of your attempt at firstly European government, but leading on to global government, that actually we're all the same, and that we can all come under the same umbrella. All of my experience told me that it couldn't work. Everything told me that the German economy was a different economy to the Greek economy, and that those guys joining together in a monetary union 10 years ago couldn't work. So I've been predicting disaster consistently over the course of the last 10 years, and now it really is happening. And if ever there was an example of why bureaucratic control, of why people who've got their dreams and their plans, just like the communists, of course, let's not forget, because they operated on exactly the same basis. If ever there was an example of why this is mad, bad, dangerous, and will lead to civil war, you're seeing it in Europe right now.
Yeah, a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. For those that don't know, they're exempt from their own EU taxes. Briefly explain, as if you're talking to 6-year-olds, for me, because I want it simply, how you have an elected parliament, but it is a ceremonial vassal to the bureaucracy that has the real power.
Oh, yeah. The Palace of Westminster, and I know that you guys in the States often watch our Prime Minister's questions, and you see this magnificent Gothic building, and just a couple of weeks ago the Queen arrived in her carriage to open Parliament, and it all looks magnificent, and the relationship between the monarch and the Parliament, it all goes back to the English Civil War, and it's something that has been the envy of the world in many ways. And yet the reality is the whole thing is now a total charade, because what we've got in Westminster is nothing more than a local government. Think of it as a county type of government, because the big decisions that affect the British economy, the big decisions that affect our lives, employment legislation, environmental legislation, health and safety, you name it, the list goes on, it's as long as your arm. All of those things are now decided by the European Union. Those laws are made in secret by an unelected bureaucracy that is called the European Commission, and we, the voter, have no means of putting them in place. We have no means of removing them. And this coup d'etat, because that's what it is, this coup d'etat of British democracy has happened slowly, surreptitiously, over the course of the last 40 years by people whose intention it was to form a European government, a greater Europe, and it is a first step towards global government. And that's the warning, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very keen to come on to shows like yours to talk to predominantly an American audience. Don't think you're safe. Don't think your democracy is okay. There are bad people out there, and you mentioned yourself the Bilderberg Group. These lunatics genuinely believe that they know what's best for us, genuinely believe in this concept of global government, and it will be a disaster. And that's why I gave up a career in business to fight against it.
Well, we commend you. We've got about 5 minutes left in this segment, and then 5 minutes after that before you've got to leave us. We want to be respectful of your time and also your strength recovering from the near-death experience you had in that airplane crash. And it's a blessing that you and the pilot survived. To get back to the collapse of Europe, it is collapsing, and the intel we just got from Jim Tucker, who's always spot on, you could set your watch and warrant by him, is that they are panicking. They're not even sure they can have world government now. They say their carbon tax is basically dead, and that many of them, for the first time in 60-plus years, did not attend. So it appears they are now being routed.
Yes, they are. Their dreams are falling to pieces. whether it's the single currency union, whether it's the whole global warming carbon tax scam, because scam is the only word that's appropriate for it. The whole thing is failing. It's losing public support massively by the day. It doesn't work in practical terms. But, let's not be complacent about this. Just because their plans are failing doesn't mean they're going to stop. And my fear is that what they're going to do now is they're going to move down a route of suppressing free speech, of censuring, and maybe ultimately even imprisoning those who challenge them and fight them. And I mean, the last time, Alex, I came on with you, we talked about my discussion that I had with Herman Van Rompuy, an unelected, unknown Belgian who is now president of 500 million people. And because I told him a few home truths, because I tried to be like the boy in the Hans Christian Andersen tale, saying, look, the emperor's got no clothes, remember that I was not just castigated for that, I was actually fined 10 days' pay for having the temerity to point out.
You were censured.
I was censured and I was fined, absolutely, told this would never happen again. So what they'll do, as the edifice collapses, what they will do is they will become even less democratic and even more vicious against those that dare to speak out against them. This battle is far from won just because their dreams are failing.
Absolutely. They're announcing in the U.S. that they now want to restrict the Internet. They want to restrict talk radio. It's now in the news. They're now proposing, and I see the same things in Europe. I mean, they can't beat us in the realm of ideas, so they're going to try to just shut us up and put us in the tower.
Absolutely. That is entirely right. And I have to say that looking at Obama from this side of the water, and I've felt this ever since he was elected, I really genuinely think that you have got a very dangerous president indeed.
Oh, I agree. He has got a cult following, though he's only got a 40% approval rating now. That group is getting more. It's almost like as Germany was collapsing and the most hardcore Nazis were supporting Hitler. They just didn't care. They were going to support him till the end.
Yeah. No, I'm constantly struck that there are these similarities between what's happening here and what is beginning to happen in America. And people have got to start waking up.
What about the British people? I mean, I know that you say both parties are, the big main parties are controlled, and they certainly are. Mr. Cameron's a Bilderberg, Stooley, Minion. But I mean, at least the fact that they threw out Brown shows that they're wanting change.
Well, it does show they want change. But what we finished up here with in Britain is a very floppy coalition government. Cameron's Conservatives are in bed now with the most Euro-fanatical, most anti-democratic Liberal Democrat Party. So whilst we've got rid of Brown, I'm afraid things ain't no better.
Because now people have got to have time to wake up to the fact that he's running a con on them. Let's come back and talk more about the future of Europe and how you see England responding as Europe collapses. Nigel Farage is our guest, member of the UK Independence Party, former leader. Looking at the political landscape, I was talking during the break, I said, what do you think is most important? And you said, well, people think they've elected Mr. Cameron and gotten a change. They need to understand it's controlled change. They need to elect truly independent parties. And you see the UK Independent Party really surging and growing and being ignored by the media and demonized when they do cover it. And it's the same thing here. Now every incumbent in the primaries, every incumbent is being defeated. Every establishment candidate is being defeated. So it does look like the awakening's happening. And I think as soon as people figure out that things stay just as bad with Cameron, just like with Obama from Bush, there's going to be a very fast wake-up here. Can you give us your take on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, millions of people are hopeful that Cameron somehow is going to be different. But, the penny's going to drop, and they're going to realise that actually they've got somebody that looks different, sounds different, appears to be more reasonable. But the reality is we have surrendered our sovereignty. We have given away our ability to govern ourselves, and it doesn't matter a damn anymore who is sitting in number 10 Downing Street. And that's why parties like the UK Independence Party are going to continue to grow. And frankly, that's what you need in America. Because again, I'm looking at it from 3,000 miles away. But I don't see the Republican Party actually offering any proper opposition to Obama. So start seeking alternatives. Start seeking candidates that have actually got the courage to stand up for democracy. At the end of the day, what this really comes down down to, it's a battle of democracy versus bureaucracy. And the global governists, they don't believe in democracy. They believe that they know best. They don't want the voters to change things. And that's the great battle. And I think we should really take heart, because people are, all across the Western world, waking up to what's being done to them.
And that's why the system is scared. You probably haven't had a chance to see it. I don't like to talk about myself here, but this is such great news. Zbigniew Brzezinski 3 weeks ago said to the CFR, for the first time the entire world is awake, our world government's in trouble. And now Bilderberg, a reporter for The Guardian, who, by the way, went for the first time last year making fun of us, now he knows how real it is, he was there when they shut it down and closed it, and he overheard at dinner the main Bilderberg managers, the minions, before they arrived, talking about, oh, these horrible protesters, oh, that Alex Jones bullhorned us in Canada and in the U.S. It's so scary. Will they attack? And they sound like addled children who aren't connected to the real world. I'm reminded of George Bush Sr. on TV 10 years after they were adopted, not knowing what a food checkout scanner is. But you know, listening to these quotes he was writing down, they sound like, you know, almost these glow-in-the-dark people that can't even feed themselves.
No, I mean, listen, Alex, of course they're scared of you, and they've been scared, I must say, you know, in Britain and in the EU, they've been scared of me for many, many years, and this is the reason I've written this book, Fighting Bull. I've chronicled how they've tried to put obstacles in my path, how they've used the black arts against me for over a decade. They've done everything they can to rubbish me, to label me as an extremist, to try and keep me off the media. They've tried to do all these things because they're terrified of the arguments, because they know that in their hearts, most people, most of us who live in the Western world, are tax-paying, law-abiding, decent people, and when we realise what has been done in our name, we will rebel against it. And, you know, we just got to keep fighting. We've got to keep fighting. We know we've got right on our side. We know that in the end, democracy is a thing that will always triumph. We know that every time in the past there have been these experiments, whether it's communism, European federalism or global governments, it does not work. So, you know, listeners, remember that. Bad though things are, be optimistic, don't give up, and keep fighting.
Well, I mean, in the last minute or two we've got, that is what's exciting here, is that reading these quotes, I mean, we're just normal, nice people that want freedom and sovereignty, and they're scared to death of us. They're scared to death of you. They are horrified that people are now testifying before the European Union Parliament about the world government. I mean, it shows that they're not invincible, that they are human as well.
Well, it does, and just give you a little example. Global warming. The whole hysteria over global warming. 2 weeks ago, Lord Monckton, Christopher Monckton, who's been on your programme before, and who was a luminary in the UK Independence Party, Monckton won a debate at the Oxford University Union the other week on the question of global warming. 2 years ago, with a young audience who'd been brainwashed, that would have been unthinkable. Completely unthinkable. And it just shows that through the efforts of all of us to make the arguments, to connect with the people, we're beginning to win.
If you just have right on your side, as the Texas Ranger founder said, that a man in the wrong can't stand up against a man in the right if the man in the right keeps on a-coming. And but I think it's well taken what you said, Nigel Farage, one of the founding members of the UK Independence Party, former leader of it, European Union Member of Parliament, author of the new book that's out, that they're going to strike back, though. The empire is going to strike back. Give us the name of your book one more time.
It's Fighting Bull. I am the fighting bull of British politics. I'm the fighting bull of European politics. And you know what? A plane crash isn't going to stop me.
God bless you, sir. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We'll be right back from Bilderberg 2010 in Spain.
Herr Präsident!
Monsieur le Président Nicolas Sarkozy, bienvenue au Parlement européen.
Monsieur le Président Watson, sans rancune. Quelles sont, messieurs les présidents, nos priorités? La première, c'est de montrer aux Européens que l'Europe peut les protéger. Et je voudrais dire un mot de ce vocabulaire, la protection. Mais depuis la plus haute antiquité, si les hommes se sont dotés d'une puissance publique, c'est parce que cette puissance publique se devait de les protéger. Monsieur le Président du Parlement européen, l'Europe doit protéger sans être protectionniste.
Mr Sarkozy, you're a very good orator, but I'm not so sure you're that good a listener. This presidency programme that you've unveiled this morning shows that you want a European Union that controls literally every single aspect of our lives, everything from a common immigration policy through to how we run our hospitals and our football clubs. I also took it from your comments that you want us to be very isolated from the rest of the world, that if people haven't got the same standards as us, we're not going to trade with them. But worst of all, it's the sheer arrogance of saying that you know best when it comes to the European project.
Moi-même, en tant que président de la République française, j'ai dû prendre mes responsabilités. La France a voté non en 2005. J'ai dit avant les élections que je n'organiserai pas de référendum en France. Je pense profondément que les questions institutionnelles, les règles de fonctionnement en Europe sont l'affaire des parlementaires plutôt que l'affaire du référendum.
You're showing contempt not just for the Irish people, but for the very concept of democracy which you say you're a champion of. You said the Polish president must keep his word, that he must ratify the treaty because that was his agreement. Well, the Irish people have spoken. Will you respect the Irish vote? Will you keep your side of that bargain which says this treaty is dead?
Nous avons maintenant le problème du non irlandais, et c'est certainement pas un Français qui peut porter un jugement sur le non irlandais, alors qu'il y a eu avant un non hollandais et un non français. J'irai donc le 21 juillet pour mon premier déplacement en tant que président du Conseil en Irlande, pour écouter, pour dialoguer, pour essayer de trouver des solutions, et la présidence française proposera une méthode et, je l'espère, une solution en accord avec le gouvernement irlandais, soit au mois d'octobre, soit au mois de décembre. Le problème est le suivant. Il nous faut à la fois ne pas brusquer nos amis irlandais et en même temps savoir dans quelles conditions, avec quels traités nous allons organiser les élections européennes de 2009. La base, ça sera soit Lisbonne, soit Nice. Il n'y aura pas de nouvelles conférences institutionnelles. Il n'y aura pas de nouveaux traités. C'est soit Lisbonne, soit Nice. J'ajoute, pour être parfaitement clair, c'est mon opinion. C'est pas pour ça que c'est la vérité.
I don't think you get it, do you? The peoples of Europe do not want deeper political integration. That's why in France they said no, and in Holland they said no, and in Ireland they said no. And if we had a vote in Britain, an overwhelming majority of us would have said no. What price democracy, Mr Sarkozy? You're going to Dublin on the 21st of July. Please do not try to do with them as you did in France and try and bypass a second referendum, try and get them to change the rules and to ratify this treaty through the back door. That would be showing utter contempt for democracy. Please don't do it.
On behalf of Europe of Freedom and Democracy, Mr. President Nigel Farage, the floor is yours.
Well, this grand occasion, Mr Barroso, your State of the Union speech doesn't, I think, quite put you on a par with President Obama, because there is one fundamental difference. He, of course, is elected and you are not. And 48 million people watched his address, and here in the European Parliament we even have to beg to get the MEPs to turn up to listen to you. And you completely You completely ignored the State of the Union. You said how you felt things were going. You pointed your way forwards. The Eurobarometer poll, the Commission's own polling organisation, tells us the truth, and it tells us that in the last 6 months there has been a dramatic drop in confidence in people's belief even in belonging to the Union. A 10% drop in Germany, a 17% drop in Greece, a 9% drop in Portugal, and less than half of EU citizens think that being a member of the club is worth it. Even more revealing is that in your own country of Portugal, in the last 6 months, a further 1 in 4 people have lost total faith in EU institutions. That, Mr Barroso, is hardly an endorsement of success or belief, and yet from most people today there seems to be this great self-satisfaction. Well, don't be too satisfied, because the people have worked it out for themselves. The real State of the Union, it is loathed and despised. And yet some claim this is because they want more Europe. Mr Verhofstadt said people want more common policies. No, the evidence is clear. The evidence is clear. Interesting, President, when I barrack people I get threatened with fines, but never mind. Never mind. The evidence is the more common policies there are, the less people like it. People have recognised the devastation of the common fisheries policy. They've recognised the inequality of the common agricultural policy, the lost business opportunities of the common commercial policy, and of course now the big one, the common currency. This ill-conceived political attempt to force people into a monetary union without ever asking any of them whether they wanted to be there. Well, it's perfectly clear that this currency doesn't suit Germany and it doesn't suit Greece. One is now trapped inside an economic prison, and you can pretend the crisis has gone away, but it hasn't, because the bond spreads are now 8% on 5- and 10-year bonds. You can smile, Mr Schulz, but you know nothing of financial markets or how these things work. And in your own country, well, why should the German taxpayer increasingly pick up the bill? This form of government isn't working, and yet what we heard today is we're going to have a common defence policy and a common foreign policy. And the other reason why these polls are where they are is people don't respect you, because you cheated to get the Lisbon Treaty through, and we were told it would simplify everything, that we'd know where we stand. Well, we don't. Who is in charge of this EU? Is it you, Mr Barroso? Is it my old friend Herman Van Rompuy? Is it the Belgian presidency? Now that really is good stuff, isn't it? You still can't form a government in your own country, and yet you're presidents of the European Union. I mean, whichever way you look at it, the whole thing is a bit of a dog's dinner, isn't it, really? The EU has never had so much power, and yet it has never been so unpopular. But not satisfied with the 2.4 billion euros a year that is now being spent on EU propaganda, you want the overall budget to increase by 6%, and personally, you ought to have a full-time TV crew, we understand, to traipse around with you, new press officers, new webmasters. You're not analysing why this is going wrong. Mr Barroso, you simply don't get it.
Dziękuję.
Thank you.
Mr. Nigel Farage, co-president.
The row over the Roma in France today is, of course, caused directly by failing European Union policies. It was a huge mistake to allow Bulgaria and Romania to join the European Union whilst there were millions of people, millions of Roma in those countries being heavily discriminated against. It is no wonder that now they're part of the Union, they're seeking to move elsewhere. And this goes with everything, doesn't it? Every single one of these policies fails, leads to a problem, whether it's this, whether it's the euro, and all the way through we see this fanatical political ambition to create a United States of Europe, regardless of the consequences, and at no time has any of this been endorsed by the voting public. That, Mr Barroso, is the true State of the Union.
Thank you.
Today I have outlined how I see the European Union doing that. I have committed to deliver the proposals to build our economic union. I have made a case to fast-track our reform agenda. I have set out how to modernize our social market economy to deliver growth and jobs in a smart, sustainable, inclusive economy through our Europe 2020 flagship initiatives. I have set out how to achieve a common energy policy in Europe. I have defended the need for an area of freedom, security and justice, where Europeans will find that their fundamental rights and obligations exist wherever they go. I have made clear that the Commission will strive for an ambitious budget. I have proposed to develop EU project bonds to finance major European projects. I have announced our reinforced commitment to the Millennium Development Goals. I have made the case clear of why we need a common crisis response capacity and also a common foreign policy and a common defence policy. And I urge European leaders to act together if they want Europe to be a global player and defend European interests. It is indeed a transformational, ambitious, challenging agenda. For Europe to succeed, the Commission needs your support for a stronger, a fairer Europe for the benefits of our citizens. I thank you for your attention.
Now, Mr. Farage, for 2 minutes.
Well, President Barroso, you're certainly flexing your muscles, using the powers given to you by the Lisbon Treaty, which you pushed through using illegitimate means. You now do everything you can on the world stage and within the EU to acquire all the attributes of statehood. And nowhere could that be more apparent than in your recent proposal for a direct tax to be levied by the European institutions on the peoples of this continent. Of course, in previous times, there was a very successful independence movement that campaigned on the slogan of no taxation without representation. And you certainly, sir, are not a representative. We haven't voted for you and we can't remove you. So I think with this direct tax, you actually made a mistake. And what an expensive club it's becoming. Just 2 years ago, Britain's net contribution was £3 billion a year. This year it's £6 billion. Next year it will be £8 billion. The year after that it's due to be £10 billion. And now we hear that you want to take away the British rebate. You want to get rid of the British rebate, which will mean by 2013 our contribution will be £13 billion. It will have quadrupled in the space of 6 years. And simply, the taxpayers of Britain, realising all of this, seeing your direct tax, will conclude that we simply can't afford the European Union. But I do see a ray of hope. The Deauville deal between Merkel and Sarkozy, the thing that you're all so terrified of today, I hope it happens. Let's have a new treaty. You yourself seem to be almost supporting it. Let's have a new European treaty and let's put it to a referendum in lots of countries, particularly in Britain, and the British people will conclude that this is a very bad deal for Britain. They'll vote for us to leave the European Union and begin the unravelling. Thank you. Well, we're happy to go. Thank you.
Mr. Schulz.
Herr Farage.
Mr. Farage, I have a question. Maybe you could give us an answer. You seem so concerned about the tax coffers in the UK, and you, the same as I, had an opportunity to decide where you would get your daily allowances from at the start of this electoral period, whether it be from the national coffers or the European Union coffers. Maybe you could tell the House whether your daily allowances come from the EU budget or from, if you opted for the national system in the UK.
I think we ought to do away with this notion of European money. Prior to there being a direct tax, there is, as we speak today, no such thing as European money. It's our money. We are a massive net contributor into this European Union for no single economic benefit in return whatsoever.
No.
It's our money.
Non posso replicare, non posso. Presidente Barroso.
President Barroso.
No, I usually do not intervene but there is a point of order that I want to make. It is not the first time that Mr. Farage, addressing to myself, says, "You have not been elected." Certainly I have not been elected by you, but I have been elected by this Parliament. I have been elected in a secret vote by this Parliament, and you belong to this Parliament. I consider that always saying that myself or the Commission have not been elected is a lack of respect to the Commission and to the Parliament to which you belong. Be a taxpayer.
Bene, vi prego di non continuare.
Please let's not continue with this.
Vi prego. Raccolgo la precisazione del Presidente.
Now, following what Mr. Barroso said, I thought that was a very fair comment, and I'll give the floor to Mr. Sosa Wagner for 2 minutes.
Mr. Co-President Nigel Farage, Freedom and Democracy.
Well, good morning, Mr. Van Rompuy. You've been in office for 1 year, and in that time the whole edifice is beginning to crumble. There's chaos. The money's running out. I should thank you. You should perhaps be the pin-up boy of the Eurosceptic movement. But just look around this chamber this morning. Just look at these faces. Look at the fear. Look at the anger. Poor old Barroso here looks like he's seen a ghost. You know, they're beginning to understand that the game is up, and yet in their desperation to preserve their dream, they want to remove any remaining traces of democracy from the system. And it's pretty clear that none of you have learned anything. You know, when you yourself, Mr. Van Rompuy, say that the euro has brought us stability, I suppose I could applaud you for having a sense of humour, but isn't this really just the bunker mentality? You know, your fanaticism is out in the open. You talked about the fact that it was a lie to believe that the nation state could exist in a 21st century globalised world. Well, that may be true in the case of Belgium, who haven't had a government for 6 months, but for the rest of us, right across every member state in this union, and perhaps this is why we see the fear in the faces, increasingly people are saying, we don't want that flag, we don't want the anthem, we don't want this political class, we want the whole thing consigned to the dustbin of history. And we had the Greek tragedy earlier on this year, and now we have the situation in Ireland. Now I know that the stupidity and greed of Irish politicians has a lot to do with this. They should never ever have joined the euro. They suffered with low interest rates, a false boom and a massive bust. But look at your response to them. What they're being told, as their government's collapsing, is that it would be inappropriate for them to have a general election. In fact, Commissioner Rehn here said they had to agree their budget first before they'd be allowed to have a general election. Just who the hell do you think you people are? You are very, very dangerous people indeed. Your obsession with creating this euro state means that you're happy to destroy democracy. You appear to be happy for millions and millions of people to be unemployed and to be poor. Untold millions must suffer so that your euro dream can continue. Well, it won't work, because it's Portugal next. With their debt levels of 325% of GDP, they're the next ones on the list, and after that I suspect it will be Spain. And the bailout for Spain would be 7 times the size of Ireland, and at that moment all of the bailout money has gone. There won't be any more. But it's even more serious than economics, because if you rob people of their identity, if you rob them of their democracy, then all they are left with is nationalism and violence. I can only hope and pray that the euro project is destroyed by the markets before that really happens.
Thank you. The next speaker, Madame.
Now, Mr. Nigel Farage.
Proszę.
Thank you. 2010 will be remembered as the year when the flaws, the deep flaws in the euro project were exposed and when the public in Europe woke up to the sheer stupidity of their leaders. And so here we have another summit, another crisis, confidence in the euro ebbing by the week. It's like watching a slow motion car crash. And now you want a permanent bailout mechanism. You think that if you have a fund of, say, €1 billion, all will be well. Well, it won't be well. The failure of the euro is nothing to do with speculation. It's nothing to do with the markets, be they currency or bonds. It's because the North and the South in Europe cannot today or at any point be put together in a single monetary union. It won't work. And politically, of course, you have to change the treaty. The reason being that the 4 German professors will win at Karlsruhe and prove that the bailouts you put in place already were in fact illegal under the treaties. Well, in many ways I welcome this treaty change because it will mean that there has to be a referendum in Ireland, and you never know. David Cameron might even keep his promise and hold a referendum in the United Kingdom, and I'm sure as Democrats you would all welcome a referendum on the EU in the United Kingdom. We should also reflect at the end of 2010 not just on the state of the Union, but on the state of Belgium. For 6 months, the Belgian presidency in office have sat here telling us we must integrate more deeply. What a farce this is. You haven't had a government in your own country since June. Here we have a non-nation trying to abolish our nation. It truly is an absolute farce, but nobody here dares to admit it because you're all in denial. Belgium is a microcosm from the entire European Union. Belgium is about to fall to bits and the rest will follow. Happy Christmas, everybody.
Dziękuję, panie przewodniczący. Teraz...
Thank you very much indeed.
I have lived in your future, and it didn't work.
Ça fait longtemps que tu souhaites faire en sorte d'inviter Nigel Farage dans le cadre de cette émission. On peut rappeler aux auditeurs qui est Nigel Farage?
Absolument, j'ai préparé un petit texte. This is special for you. Because I see you as the Charles de Gaulle, the English Charles de Gaulle.
Je vous vois
that's
well, it's a very nice something. It's a very nice compliment. Thank you. I'm not sure it's deserved, but it's very, very sweet of you.
Pierre lui dit, je vous vois comme le Charles de Gaulle britannique. Et Nigel Farage prend le compliment.
Alors, je vais lire le texte de Nigel là, donc juste pour cela. Nigel Farage est un véritable révolutionnaire. C'est un révolutionnaire anglais qui risque de devenir le nouveau Churchill, cette fois. Churchill dans le sens du sang et des larmes. Farage n'aime pas ceux qui ne sont pas élus par le peuple. C'est un démocrate virulent, le seul qui au Parlement européen est resté assis quand tous les députés s'étaient levés pour applaudir le prince Charles, qui a eu le culot de demander encore plus de pouvoir pour les commissaires européens. Lui, Nigel Farage, sujet de sa majesté, ne s'est pas levé pour applaudir. C'était en février 2008. Et ça a fait un scandale. Alors, mais pourtant, on pourrait penser que Nigel Farage est plus anglais que la famille royale d'Angleterre. En d'autres termes, il est peut-être et sans doute même plus royaliste que le prince Charles. Cela avait fait scandale en effet à l'époque, et une certaine presse british lui avait taillé plusieurs costumes de chez Harrods. Ce fut son premier acte fort d'opposant à l'Europe et d'euro-sceptique. Ensuite, le 25 novembre 2009, lorsqu'il avait félicité ironiquement le Parlement européen pour avoir réussi à appliquer le traité de Lisbonne, et cela malgré l'opposition du peuple français, hollandais et irlandais, Nigel Farage avait osé dire pour la première fois que cela mettait fin à la démocratie en Europe, et il a souligné la nomination arbitraire de la baronne Ashton au poste de ministre des Affaires étrangères, la baronne Ashton que personne ne connaissait, hein, et surtout, du fameux Herman von Rompuy, président maintenant de l'Europe, élu non par le peuple, hein, donc les 500 millions d'Européens, nous donc, mais principalement par 2 personnes ou 3 personnes, dont Nicolas Sarkozy et Angela Merkel. Voilà. Mais dans son discours à l'époque, donc il avait, hein, vous vous souvenez, il avait traité Von Rompuy de serpillière mouillée, hein, et qu'il avait le charisme d'une serpillière mouillée. Ça a été effectivement donc son discours, eh bien, a effacé le reste. Et franchement, you became almost a worldwide politician, a celebrity. Lorsque vous avez dit « Je ne veux pas être impoli, mais vraiment, Monsieur Von Rompuy, vous avez le charisme d'une serpillière humide et l'aspect d'un petit guichetier de banque. La question que je veux vous poser, qui êtes-vous? Je n'ai jamais entendu parler de vous. Personne en Europe n'avait jamais entendu parler de vous. Je veux vous poser une question au président. Qui a voté pour vous? Et quel mécanisme vous a fait élire? La démocratie n'est pas populaire avec vous. Monsieur Nigel Farage, c'est un honneur pour nous de vous avoir à cette radio. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much that you accepted our invitation. Alors, ce qui est intéressant de noter pour nos auditeurs et auditrices, c'est que Nigel Farage est un ancien trader. Donc, il connaît la musique. You started your life as a trader, if I remember.
I did. I spent 20 years.
20 ans en tant que trader.
Yeah, and I was working on an institution called the London Metal Exchange.
London Metal Exchange,
which is
where everything is playing right now there with the gold and silver.
Wow!
Wow!
I have.
C'est un spécialiste de l'or et de l'argent. Attention, c'est pas n'importe qui là. En plus,
I have missed the biggest boom in commodities there's ever been.
J'ai raté vraiment le plus grand boom dans les matières premières, c'est pas possible.
But I spent 20 years doing that.
J'ai passé 20 ans à le faire.
For 7 of those years, I worked for Credit Lyonnais.
Pendant 7 ans, j'ai travaillé pour le Crédit Lyonnais.
And I enjoyed my career in London.
Et j'ai adoré ma carrière à Londres.
And I had no intention.
Et j'avais jamais eu l'intention
of ever being in politics.
De faire de la politique.
But it was just when I realized in the early 1990s that the politicians of all our countries wanted to abandon our national currencies.
Et donc je me suis rendu compte que dans les années 90, que tous les politiciens voulaient abandonner en fait nos monnaies souveraines.
And they wanted to take us into this crazy euro project.
Et donc ils voulaient mettre dans ce projet dingue qui était l'euro.
And that got me involved.
Et donc c'est là où je me suis vraiment intéressé à la chose, là où je me suis impliqué.
And it was then that I realized that actually this wasn't just about a currency.
Et c'est là où j'ai réalisé que c'est pas simplement la monnaie, le monétaire.
It was about the creation of a new state.
Et que c'était en fait la création d'un nouvel État.
With a flag.
Avec un drapeau.
An anthem.
Hein, avec un hymne.
And it wants to have an army, and a navy, and an air force.
Avec une armée, une marine, donc des avions.
Its own court, its own laws.
Avec ses propres tribunaux, ses propres lois.
And all of this is being built, and no one's ever asked me.
Et personne ne m'a jamais rien demandé à moi.
No one's ever asked me my opinion as to whether I want this or not.
On m'a pas demandé si je voulais ça ou pas en tant qu'anglais.
And when, of course, the French people in 2005 were asked whether they want it, they said no.
Et en 2005, lorsqu'on a demandé aux Français s'ils en voulaient, ils ont dit non.
But Mr. Sarkozy thinks it's perfectly okay to ignore that.
Mais M. Sarkozy pense que c'est tout à fait naturel d'ignorer ça.
And to carry on.
Et de continuer.
With political union. So my original reason for getting involved in politics, I feel, is more justified than it ever was.
Et donc ma carrière politique est justifiée plus que jamais.
You know, we may, as a eurozone and allied countries, have for the moment bailed out the Greek and the Irish banks. Do not think this crisis is over. It is not by a long way.
Je ne voudrais pas être un oiseau de mauvais augure, mais je pense que cette crise financière va
devenir encore pire.
Et donc, comme nous avons sauvé effectivement les Grecs, donc nous allons sauver d'autres pays.
Et malgré ce qu'on peut créer, la zone euro, etc., le fait qu'on ait réussi à sauver les banques jusqu'à maintenant, c'est pas ça qui va nous garantir que la crise est finie.
So the anger may well come over the next couple of years, But let's make sure it's not just the bankers that we're angry with, also the moronic politicians who put us in this mess as well.
Alors la colère va venir dans les années à venir, mais il faut faire attention de ne pas être en colère uniquement que contre les banquiers, mais aussi contre les moroniques, ces abrutis de politiciens qui nous ont mis dans cette situation.
Ça, effectivement. Alors, this is interesting, considering. Ça, c'est très intéressant. It fell this morning, actually, on Associated Press, something. The Ministry of Defense, English Ministry of Defense.
This is too upsetting to even think about answering.
C'est trop énervant. C'est trop énervant d'y penser.
I'm sorry. They said, I beg your pardon. They said they're going to fire 11,000 soldiers.
Le ministre de la Défense britannique a dit qu'il allait virer 11 000.
Nigel, you are the only one. How many people are there in this assembly?
There's 750 of us.
700. How come that there's only one who have the charisma, to talk, to come up and to go head on with Herman Van Rompuy? How come that you are only one on 700?
Il y a 750 députés européens à l'Assemblée européenne. Et comment se fait-il que Nigel Farage soit le seul à avoir le charisme nécessaire pour aller aller au front et haranguer Monsieur Herman Van Rompuy?
Well, I think the reason for that, of course, is that I'm leading the only Eurosceptic group that exists in the Parliament. So I'm the only Eurosceptic that sits on the front bench in that Parliament. So I am in a very privileged position.
La raison, c'est qu'en fait, il est le leader du seul parti eurosceptique du Parlement européen. Donc c'est pour ça que c'est lui qui a la parole, parce que c'est le seul parti eurosceptique de toute l'Assemblée européenne.
But of course, the real reason is that what the European project has done in France and in Britain and everywhere else is it has purchased virtually the entire political class.
Oh my God.
The European Union, no, I mean it, the European Union is the best thing that ever happened to career politicians.
Oh my God.
Le problème, c'est que l'Union européenne a littéralement acheté toute la classe politique, tout le spectre de la classe politique. L'Union européenne a acheté ça, et c'est la meilleure chose qui soit arrivée pour les politiciens professionnels, cette Union européenne.
When do you mean that they have been bought? What does it mean? Technically, practically, what does it mean?
Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire acheter?
What it means is if you support the project,
donc ça veut dire si vous supportez un projet,
you are pretty much guaranteed.
Donc vous êtes assuré que
a job for life.
Donc vous avez un travail, un boulot à vie.
Job for life. If you lose your seat as an MEP,
si vous perdez votre siège,
but you're a supporter of the project,
mais si vous supportez le projet, la loi,
you re-emerge.
Vous réémergez
within a couple of months,
quelques mois plus tard,
with an even more highly paid job working for the European Commission.
Avec un autre boulot à la Commission européenne, encore mieux payé.
It is the development of a European political class, and as I say, it's
donc c'est le développement d'une nouvelle classe politique européenne.
It's rather like being a sort of trapeze artist at the circus, and you're highly paid for doing it, but there's a great big safety net there, and it's called the European Union.
C'est comme au cirque, on est payé pour faire du trapèze, mais avec un énorme filet de sécurité en dessous, donc on peut tomber, c'est pas grave, on revient toujours dessus.
In some cases, they've bought these propagandists for their entire lives.
Donc ils ont acheté ces propagandistes pour le reste de leur vie. What is your feelings, your intuition about what is going to happen?
Quel est votre point de vue, votre intuition sur ce qui va se passer dans cette crise économique et dans les années à venir?
Actually, the French people haven't given in to all of this. And when you meet French people, whether it's in Strasbourg or in the south of France or in Dunkirk or wherever you go, and you talk to ordinary French people in a restaurant or a bar, actually their attitude towards all of this is very much the same as mine is. What's happened in France is that your politicians, they're the ones that have completely sold your country out.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mais en fait, quand on regarde de plus près, on voit bien que les Français, le peuple français n'a pas du tout abandonné cette idée de démocratie. Et quand on parle avec des gens dans les bars, que ce soit à Strasbourg, à Dunkerque, dans le sud de la France, à Paris, où vous voulez en France, les gens sont d'accord avec ce que dit Nigel Farage. Et en fait, ce sont les politiciens qui ont vendu la France et la démocratie française à l'Union européenne.
Alors, there is a question. Il y a une question que tout le monde nous pose. On a eu ça à la radio maintes fois. Many times we had this question, and we hear Nicolas Sarkozy and also Herman Van Rompuy talking systematically about this new world order. So, what What the hell is this new world order they're talking about?
On a entendu systématiquement Nicolas Sarkozy et Herman Van Rompuy parler de nouvel ordre mondial, New World Order. Alors qu'est-ce que ça veut dire exactement ce nouvel ordre mondial?
Pardon, et Van Rompuy dit gouvernance mondiale, c'est son expression. What does it mean exactly?
Well, I mean, it also linked in with a phrase that I hear from time to time, that we're living in the post-democratic age.
Nous vivons dans l'âge post-démocratique.
When I hear people saying that, I feel like punching them, actually. Because what right have they got to tell us? Who are these people?
Et quand les gens disent ça, j'ai envie de leur mettre un coup de poing.
Qui sont ces gens? I mean, it is this whole New World Order stuff. It is the ultimate belief in big government. Supranational government in global blocs like the European Union, but actually, and Van Rompuy has said it himself, leading on to global government. Global government.
It means one government, only one.
Well, ultimately, logically, that's where all this is heading in the minds of some of these people. Now, I don't think it's going to get there, because I think that the European project, frankly, the euro anyway, is pretty much hitting the buffers already. I think the populations of our countries are waking up. I think our voting patterns are going to radically change. So I don't think we're going to get to one world government, but that just shows you how mad and arrogant some of these people are.
Alors effectivement, Van Rompuy parle de gouvernance mondiale, on parle donc d'un seul gouvernement pour le monde entier, ce serait ça l'idée, mais selon Nigel Farage, ça n'arrivera pas. Cette croyance en un seul gouvernement, ça n'arrivera pas parce que les gens se réveillent, parce que l'euro est tout simplement dans une crise dont il ne pourra pas se relever. Et donc le fait que les gens se réveillent, le fait que les élections, la façon dont les gens votent va changer, fera que ce gouvernement mondial a très peu de chances d'aboutir.
I think my point was a valid one, that here is this nondescript bureaucrat who hasn't been voted for and yet has been given this most incredible position.
Yeah.
The President of Europe, with a salary bigger than Obama's, with such an arrogant attitude that he even uses the fleet of cars in Brussels to take his family to the airport when they go on the summer holidays. I mean, how can it be that somebody like that is the most important part in Europe? And if some people thought that my speech was a bit sharp, or perhaps even a little bit rude, well, I'm not going to apologise, because I think I did help to at least wake people up to the fact that these are the people that are taking over.
Definitely.
Quand Nigel Farage avait apostrophé Monsieur Van Rompuy quand il était à la tribune au Parlement européen, et il lui avait dit: mais qui êtes-vous, Monsieur Van Rompuy, qui vous a élu? Et certains ont peut-être trouvé ce discours un peu violent, un peu impoli, mais il a pris une amende pour ça, 3 000 € d'amende pour ce discours, mais malgré peut-être la violence qu'il y avait dans ce discours-là, Nigel pense...
Dans quelle mesure est-ce qu'il est possible de pouvoir réguler les banques à travers leurs lois?
To think carefully, but what I've noticed.
Il faut faire très attention à tout ça.
I was elected in 1999 to the European Parliament.
Moi, j'ai été élu en 1999.
I'm now a bit of a grey-haired veteran, and I've been watching this for some time.
Tout ça.
And it's almost as if people in elected politics think, if we just help push through more and more legislation.
Donc si on aide à pousser encore plus de législation,
we can then justify to our voters that we're doing our job.
Donc on peut justifier aux électeurs qu'on fait notre travail. Donc
and probably what we ought to be doing is we ought to be getting rid of lots of legislation.
Et en fait, ce qu'on devrait faire, c'est nous débarrasser justement de beaucoup d'autres lois.
And helping to free up our small businesses.
Et donc justement donner plus de liberté aux petites entreprises,
and
aux PME, PMI.
Nobody speaks up for small businesses.
Il y a personne qui parle pour les PME, PMI.
Millions of small businesses.
Il y en a des millions.
Millions in France.
Il y en a des millions en France, en Angleterre.
And no one seems to care about them.
Et tout le monde s'en fout.
So that's what I would like to see politicians
Et moi,
doing.
je voudrais voir les politiciens faire ça.
I think we've got far too much law already.
On a déjà trop de lois en ce moment.
Donc ce que vous préconisez, c'est réduire certaines lois qui pour vous seraient superficielles, et en même temps pour éviter les évasions dans les paradis fiscaux, et sans pour autant faire en sorte de réguler uniquement au niveau européen le système financier. Il faudrait le faire peut-être à l'échelle globale, mondiale.
You want to avoid to have banks and businesses to go out of countries, of European countries, and you don't want to regulate too much. So do we need to have a global regulation?
Of course. You know, we are living in a 21st century global economy.
Bien sûr, on vit dans
global economy.
Un système économique qui date du XXe siècle.
Whatever we do, whether it's trade, whether it's our attitude towards climate change, I mean, here's a good example. You know, if we tax our manufacturing industries really heavily because they produce carbon dioxide.
Ouais, si par exemple on taxe nos entreprises parce qu'elles font du carbone, du dioxyde.
We can pretend we're making the world a better place.
On peut prétendre qu'on rend le monde meilleur.
But if the Chinese are building 3 coal-fired power stations every week.
Mais si les Chinois pendant ce temps-là en construisent 3 autres usines
de charbon,
so all of these issues.
Tout ça c'est
need to be dealt with on a global level.
Tout ça, ça doit être réglé au niveau global.
But that does not mean
mais ce qui ne veut pas
global government.
Par un gouvernement global.
It means people sitting round a table.
C'est des gens assis autour d'une table.
And coming to sensible agreements.
Et donc arriver à des accords
sensés.
Ouais.
Et vous pensez que c'est envisageable à l'heure d'aujourd'hui par rapport aux échos que vous avez avec vos confrères?
You think this can be achievable by where we are now and your colleagues in the European Parliament? Do you think we can do it now?
No, I think we are trapped.
Non, je pense qu'on est piégé.
In the European Union, in a mindset.
Dans l'Union européenne, dans une idéologie.
And the mindset says that everything we've done so far is correct.
Et cette idéologie nous dit tout ce que nous avons fait jusqu'à présent est correct.
So, for example, I mean, whenever I ask my friend, my great mate, Mr. Pumpy, whenever I ask him, is there a plan B for the euro? He always says, no, there is no plan B. So the EU has decided that we will tax our businesses for carbon emissions, we will keep the single currency, that we will stay on this course. And I think that the European time zone and market is headed for a huge economic disaster.
Alors quand je demande à mon ami, mon pote Von Rompuy, je lui demande est-ce qu'il y a un plan B pour l'euro, et lui tout ce qu'il a à répondre c'est non, il n'y a pas de plan B, on va continuer, on va garder la monnaie unique, on va continuer à taxer les entreprises qui produisent trop de carbone, on va continuer dans cette direction-là, et évidemment selon Nigel Farage, c'est absolument pas la solution.
Nigel, so you know that the euro is going to fail. Vous savez que l'euro va exploser. You know that Wall Street is going to fail at one point or another. Vous savez que Wall Street va exploser à un moment ou à un autre. So when do you think that all this will come together? Quand pensez-vous que tout ça va arriver en même temps?
If I knew the answers to that, I wouldn't be talking to you now. I'd be outside on my mobile phone to my stockbroker. You know, I mean, this is.
Do you have your money? You still left your money in Wall Street?
I tell you what.
You didn't buy gold and silver?
I have some in my pension pot. Yeah. No, I mean, look. With all these things, of course, you know, predicting the exact timing of these things is very, very difficult. I mean, I remember, you know, for years thinking that at some point the Soviet Union would fall to pieces. At some point, that wall would come down. And yet I remember arguing with a friend a week before it did that I couldn't see it coming down for decades. And it was gone within a week. You know, you can't tell when these things are going to happen.
Donc évidemment, c'est très très difficile de prédire l'avenir et de prédire quand est-ce que tout ça va s'effondrer, parce que s'il le savait, il serait pas ici, il serait accroché à son téléphone en train de vendre sur les marchés évidemment. Et il se souvient de l'époque de l'Union soviétique dans les années 80. Il discutait avec un ami une semaine avant la chute du mur et il se disait que peut-être ça durerait encore des dizaines d'années. Et en fait, la semaine prochaine, c'était fini. Donc c'est impossible de prévoir à l'avance ce genre d'événement.
But what you can say for certain is that a monetary union between Germany and Greece cannot last forever.
Une union monétaire entre la Grèce et l'Allemagne ne peut pas durer très longtemps.
Ça, au moins, on en est sûr.
And what you can also say, for absolute certain, is that nobody, and I mean nobody, amongst the 500 million people
sur les 500
that
millions
live within the European Union,
qui vivent dans l'Union,
nobody has actually ever given consent for us to throw away our histories, our democracies, our independence, and to be governed by these people.
Et personne n'a donné son accord pour que la démocratie, nos libertés, etc. soient prises par tous ces gens.
And you know, I've always said this. I mean, if in a free and fair referendum in the United Kingdom, my fellow Britons decided that they wanted to be province number 38 of the new United States of Europe, well, I wouldn't like it, but I would accept it. Because they at least would have chosen themselves.
Oui, si on faisait un référendum en Angleterre et que ses compatriotes britanniques votaient pour devenir le numéro 38 de l'Union européenne, d'un État fédéral européen, eh bien, ça lui fera pas plaisir, mais il l'accepterait. Et là, le problème, c'est qu'il n'y a pas de démocratie.
But I'm going to personally keep this fight going. And we'll see UKIP grow, and we'll see parties in France grow, just as we're seeing the one in Finland grow. And in the end, we're going to bully our leaders into giving us proper referendums with binding results.
Il va faire en sorte de continuer ce combat, et des partis se créeront en France, comme le parti en Finlande. Le UKIP, son parti, va continuer à grandir, et ce combat va continuer tant que la démocratie ne sera pas à l'échelle européenne.
I saw one of your intervention on TV. You said, vous avez dit que toute cette histoire d'Europe va finir dans le sang. You said that all this Europe stuff thing is going to end in blood.
Well, I think that if you take from people the most powerful thing they possess, their ability through the ballot box to hire and fire their leaders.
Si on enlève aux gens leur capacité, plus grand pouvoir, leur capacité à voter.
Well, if you can't change your future by voting,
et quand on peut pas changer notre futur avec le vote,
what else are you left with?
Qu'est-ce qui vous reste?
Apart from civil disobedience.
À part de la
désobéissance civile.
Apart from civil disorder. And I would point to you, and I mean, some people find this awkward, but I would point to you that we've made this mistake once already in the 20th century in Europe, when we got together a group of small, difficult Balkan countries, and we forced them all into one state, and we called it Yugoslavia.
Yeah, right.
Oui, c'est déjà arrivé dans le XXe siècle, quand on a pris plusieurs petits pays, on les a forcés à se réunir ensemble et on a créé la Yougoslavie.
It was an artificial state. Nobody voted for it. Nobody asked for it. Politicians thought it was a good idea.
Un pays artificiel, personne n'a voté pour lui. Les politiciens étaient les seuls à penser que c'était une bonne idée.
And you know what's happened since 1990, as people have fought and in many cases done terrible things to get their rights of national self-determination back. That is just how dangerous all of this is.
Et on a vu les choses terribles qui se sont passées à partir de 1990 dans ce pays, et la violence avec laquelle les gens ont voulu réclamer leur souveraineté nationale.
And if I mean, look, if the state of Belgium can't even hold together, what chance is there for 27 of us?
Si même la Belgique, un petit pays, n'arrive pas à créer un gouvernement et à tenir debout, comment est-ce qu'on peut le faire avec 27 pays?
So, basically what you're saying is that Europe, the today, is the Yugoslavia of yesterday, so it's going to explode, period.
I think you're taking my words a little bit too literally, and a little bit too far, but I am warning that if we continue down this route, then I am deeply fearful. Deeply fearful.
This is the image you used, so it's
quite
strong.
No, well, I know it's very strong, but I mean, you know, again, I want to try and say these things in a responsible way. But I think we're doing something incredibly dangerous. I think already what you're seeing in Greece, in terms of what's been happening on the streets, buildings being set on fire, people being killed. I think the warning signs are there.
Alors, ce qu'on a vu avec la Yougoslavie, ça va pas forcément se répéter à l'identique, mais en tout cas, ce qui est important, c'est que, ce qui est important de dire, c'est que c'est une situation très dangereuse, qu'on en voit aujourd'hui les prémices en Grèce, et donc c'est une situation vraiment très très dangereuse, et même si la comparaison avec la Yougoslavie est peut-être un peu extrême, en tout cas, on n'est pas loin de ça.
Alors, on voit les immeubles en feu, etc. à Athènes, à la télévision. So, what would be your advice to the French people today? Quel serait votre conseil pour les Français? What should we do?
Do not vote.
Ne votez pas.
For any politician or party that has done what they've done to you, especially since 2005.
Ne votez pour aucun parti politique qui a fait ce qu'ils vous ont fait, surtout depuis le référendum de 2005.
You know, they have treated you with absolute contempt, and I think that people know that. I think Sarkozy's poll rating shows it, and people need to remember in France that being patriotic, believing in democracy, believing that you should shape your own future, isn't right-wing or left-wing. It's something that should unite the people of the country, and I really do think that there are some new political figures appearing on the French political scene one or two of whom I think look very interesting, and I think big change is coming, and you may well see the beginning of that change with your presidential elections that happen next year.
Donc son message aux Français serait que l'envie de démocratie, le patriotisme, ce ne sont pas des valeurs qui sont de droite ou de gauche, c'est au contraire des valeurs démocratiques, républicaines on pourrait dire, et que donc on va voir en France une nouvelle classe politique émerger, et Sarkozy, avec ses sondages au plus bas, ne se relèvera pas, et donc c'est à des nouveaux politiques de se lever, et c'est à nous-mêmes de shape our future, de construire notre futur.
Et il a dit surtout que la classe politique nous a trahis. C'est ça qu'a dit Nigel Farage. C'est très important. Notre classe politique nous a trahis.
Alors, qu'est-ce que vous pensez, notamment des différentes élections qui ont eu lieu à l'heure actuelle en Europe, qui mettent en avant des partis politiques qui sont considérés comme extrémistes, pardon.
How do you see the recent elections in all over Europe that we've seen a lot of political parties that are tagged extremist or extreme right wing?
Well, that was bound to happen, wasn't it? I mean, again, you know,
ça devait se passer.
What goes along with the rise in street violence,
ce qui va avec, en fait, avec la violence dans les rues,
and with people being helpless,
et avec les gens qui ne peuvent rien faire,
is that of course they do become tempted by political extremes on the left or right.
Et donc ils veulent voter à l'extrême, aussi bien à droite qu'à gauche.
I mean, this is no surprise to me at all.
C'est pas une surprise. Hein.
I mean, the irony.
L'ironie,
is that the project that was designed to get rid of nation states,
qui a été fait donc pour se débarrasser des États souverains,
actually is in danger of breeding a very extreme form of nationalism.
Et donc en fait est en train de nourrir une forme très forte de nationalisme.
Which is why all of us that believe in democracy, that believe in our countries.
C'est pour que tous ceux qui croient en leur pays, en nos libertés,
but don't want extremism,
mais qui ne veulent pas de l'extrémisme.
You know, frankly, we need to get moving, don't we?
Non, donc il faut vraiment qu'on se bouge. Nigel Farage, thank you very, very much to be here with us.
Merci
it was a pleasure. And as a gift for you, so I found somehow American version of my book. It's one of the few copy left. So it's the gift from my guardian angel to yours.
Well, thank you.
Hope he will read it.
I will. Thank you very much
guardian
indeed.
angel.
And thank you for having me on the show this afternoon. And I do hope that at some point in the future, my French will improve to the point where we can one day come and do it in French as well.
Donc j'espère que mon français s'améliorera, que je pourrai venir ici parler en français.
Ça sera avec.
Well, thank you for that welcome to your great city. You know, one thing Britain and France have in common is that our politicians, our political class, have sold us out. And look what's behind me. A European Commission building here in the middle of Paris. This is your government. There are 27 of them, unelected bureaucrats, and they make all the laws by how you have to live. You've never voted for it. We've never voted for it. And at some point in time, we're going to force a referendum on this issue so that we can have a Europe in which we trade together, in which we're friends together, we can cooperate together. But we don't want to be in each other's pockets. We don't want to be in the same political union. We want democracy in our own countries. We want to get back our own pride and self-respect. And you're only going to get that by voting for parties who do not support the sellout of our nations to these awful people behind me. So come on, France, wake up.